I paid a DNA lab to test my son's paternity, and they called the FBI instead of giving me results. The woman on the phone identified herself as Dr. Caroline Fisher from GeneTech Labs, and her voice had a tightness that immediately told me something was wrong. Mr. Brennan, I'm calling about the paternity test you submitted 9 days ago. Sample ID 8842JKL. We need you to come to our facility immediately. Don't discuss this call with anyone. The FBI is en route to speak with you. My hand went numb around my phone. The FBI? I'd submitted a simple paternity test because my 3-year-old son Ethan looked nothing like me or my wife Melissa, because doubt had been eating me alive for 3 years, because I needed to know if my marriage was built on lies. What could the FBI possibly want with a paternity test? Dr. Fisher's voice cut through my panic. Mr. Brennan, I need you to confirm you submitted samples for yourself and for a child named Ethan Brennan, age 3 years, 2 months. I confirmed it, my voice barely working. What's going on? Is something wrong with the results? There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was lower, almost frightened. Mr. Brennan, your son's DNA is flagged in multiple federal databases. The moment we ran his profile, our system triggered automatic alerts to the FBI, Homeland Security, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I've never seen this happen in 15 years of running this lab. You need to get here now. I drove to GeneTech Labs in a haze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Flagged in federal databases? Ethan was 3 years old. He'd been born at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, had a birth certificate, a social security number, pediatric records. He'd never been missing or exploited. He spent his days at a Montessori preschool, learning colors and shapes and how to share toys with other kids. The only unusual thing about him was that he didn't look like either of his parents, which was why I'd ordered the damn test in the first place. I'd suspected Melissa had an affair. I'd imagined confronting her, imagined divorce lawyers and custody battles and the humiliation of raising another man's child. But federal databases? Missing children? That was something else entirely. My mind spun through impossible scenarios. Had Melissa stolen him from somewhere? Had there been a hospital mix-up? Was Ethan not who I thought he was? The lab was in a bland office park in Schaumburg, and when I pulled into the parking lot, I saw 2 black SUVs with government plates parked near the entrance. My mouth went dry. This was real. Whatever was happening, it was serious enough for federal agents to respond within hours. Inside, the receptionist, who'd been so professionally pleasant when I'd picked up my test kit, now looked at me like I was radioactive. She didn't speak, just pointed to a conference room where Dr. Fisher waited with 3 people in dark suits. 2 men and a woman, all wearing visitor badges clipped to their jackets, all with the kind of alert, assessing expressions that law enforcement develops after years of interviewing suspects. Dr. Fisher was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back in a bun, wearing a white lab coat over business casual clothes. She looked shaken, like someone who'd stumbled into something far bigger than she'd signed up for. Mr. Brennan, these are Special Agents Kowalski, Delacroix, and Huang from the FBI. They need to ask you some questions about your son. Agent Kowalski, the older of the 2 men, gestured to a chair. Sit down, Mr. Brennan. We need to understand how you came to be in possession of this child. In possession? The phrasing made Ethan sound like stolen property, like something I'd acquired illegally. I'm his father, I said, but my voice came out uncertain, questioning. Was I? What had the DNA test shown before the FBI got involved? Agent Kowalski pulled out a tablet and turned it toward me, showing a photograph of a young woman, maybe 25 years old, with long, dark hair and delicate features. Do you recognize this woman? I'd never seen her before in my life. I told them that, and Agent Delacroix, the woman, leaned forward. Her name was Natasha Volkov. She was a Russian national who entered the United States on a student visa 6 years ago. She disappeared 4 years ago from a university in Boston. 3 months later, her body was found in an industrial park outside Philadelphia. She'd been dead for approximately 8 weeks when discovered. Cause of death was manual strangulation. She was 4 months pregnant when she died. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. What does this have to do with my son? Agent Huang, who'd been silent until now, spoke in a careful, measured tone. Your son's DNA is a familial match to Natasha Volkov. According to our analysis, there's a 99.7% probability that she was his biological mother, which means your son is the child she was carrying when she was murdered, which means someone cut that child out of her body, kept him alive, and somehow placed him in your custody. We need to know how that happened, Mr. Brennan. We need to know everything about how you came to have this child. My vision was tunneling. I thought I might vomit. Melissa. Oh God, Melissa. What had she done? I told them everything, my voice shaking, my hands pressed flat against the conference table to stop them from trembling. Melissa and I had been married for 5 years when she got pregnant, or when she claimed she got pregnant. We'd been trying for 2 years with no success. Fertility treatments, ovulation tracking, the whole humiliating process. Then one day she told me she was pregnant, showed me a positive pregnancy test, started exhibiting all the normal symptoms, morning sickness, fatigue, food cravings. I'd been so happy I hadn't questioned anything. She'd gained weight, her belly had grown, She'd complained about back pain and swollen ankles. We'd prepared a nursery, taken birthing classes, read parenting books. At 8 months, she'd told me she wanted to deliver at a birthing center instead of a hospital. Said she wanted a more natural experience, that hospitals were too clinical and cold. I'd supported her decision. I'd trusted her completely. She'd gone into labor on a Sunday morning, and I'd driven her to the birthing center in Aurora, a small facility run by certified midwives. They'd sent me to the waiting room, said she wanted privacy during delivery, that some women preferred not to have their partners present. I'd waited for 6 hours, pacing and anxious, until a midwife came out holding a tiny bundle and said, "Congratulations, you have a son." I'd held Ethan for the first time in that waiting room, this impossibly small human with dark curly hair and a scrunched-up face, and I'd fallen in love instantly. I'd never questioned where he came from. He was my son, except he wasn't. Agent Kowalski wrote down the name of the birthing center, the date, every detail I could remember. "We'll need to speak with your wife immediately." "Where is she now?" "She was at home with Ethan. It was Thursday afternoon, and she'd have picked him up from preschool an hour ago. They were probably in the living room right now, Ethan playing with his trucks while Melissa made dinner, living their normal life while I sat in this conference room learning that nothing about our family was real. "Before we bring her in," Agent Delacroix said, and her voice had gentled slightly, like she recognized I was in shock, "I need to ask you something. Did you ever suspect anything was wrong? Any indication that she wasn't actually pregnant? Any sign that Ethan wasn't biologically yours?" I thought about the past 3 years, searching my memory for red flags I'd missed. Melissa had been protective of Ethan from the beginning, sometimes obsessively so. She'd homeschooled him for the first 2 years, only agreeing to preschool when I'd insisted he needed socialization. She'd been paranoid about pediatrician visits, always wanting to be present, always asking detailed questions about what information got recorded where. She'd been resistant to family photos, to posting anything about Ethan on social media. I thought she was just being cautious, that maybe she had postpartum anxiety. Now I understood she'd been hiding him, hiding evidence of a child who shouldn't exist. Agent Huang pulled up another image on his tablet, a crime scene photo I wish I'd never seen. Natasha Volkov's body, decomposed and horrific, lying in dirt and debris. The autopsy showed evidence of a crude cesarean section. Whoever cut this child out of her used a non-sterile blade, likely a hunting knife. The incision was jagged, unprofessional. She was probably still alive when it happened, though hopefully unconscious from strangulation. The baby was removed, the umbilical cord cut with the same blade. Based on fetal development, the child would have been viable, approximately 32 weeks gestation, but keeping a premature infant alive outside a hospital requires significant medical knowledge or equipment. We never found the baby. Until now. I ran to the trash can in the corner and vomited. The agents waited patiently while I emptied my stomach, while I tried to process that the child I'd raised for 3 years, the boy I'd taught to ride a tricycle and count to 10 and say please and thank you, had been cut from his murdered mother's body. Someone had killed Natasha Volkov, stolen her unborn child, and somehow convinced my wife to help deliver that child to me, as if he were ours. Or Melissa had done it herself. The thought made me vomit again. Could my wife be a murderer? Could the woman I'd shared a bed with for 8 years be capable of strangling a pregnant woman and cutting out her baby? Agent Kowalski's phone rang. He stepped out of the conference room to take the call, and when he came back, his expression was grim. "Local police are at your residence. Your wife isn't there. Neighbors reported seeing her leave approximately 45 minutes ago with a child matching your son's description and 2 large suitcases. She was driving a vehicle registered to her maiden name, a car you didn't know she owned. She's running, Mr. Brennan. She knew you'd submitted that DNA test, and she knew what would happen when the results came back." My chest tightened. How had she known? I'd been so careful, had submitted the test while she was out, had used a credit card she didn't have access to, unless she'd been monitoring me somehow, unless she'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years, had contingency plans in place, had always known I'd eventually figure out the truth. Agent Delacroix pulled out her phone. "We're issuing an Amber Alert for Ethan Brennan. Age 3, dark curly hair, brown eyes, approximately 35 pounds. Last seen with Melissa Brennan, age 34, auburn hair, green eyes, 5'6". Vehicle description coming through now. Mr. Brennan, I need you to think very carefully. Does your wife have any properties we don't know about? Any friends or family who might hide her? Anywhere she might run?" I tried to think through the panic. Melissa's parents were dead, had died in a car accident when she was 19. She was an only child. Her friends were mostly other preschool moms, suburban women. I couldn't imagine helping her evade federal authorities, unless those relationships were as fake as everything else, unless her entire life had been constructed specifically for this moment. "Her maiden name," I said. "You said the car was registered to her maiden name. What was it?" Agent Huang checked his notes. "Volkov. Melissa Volkov before she married you and became Melissa Brennan." The room went cold. Volkov. The same last name as the murdered woman. "They're related," I said, my voice hollow. "Natasha and Melissa. They have to be related." Agent Kowalski was already on his phone, barking orders to someone. Within minutes, they had the information. Natasha Volkov had an older sister, 5 years older, who'd immigrated to the United States 2 years before Natasha. Her name was Irina Volkov. She'd changed her name legally 7 years ago to Melissa Volkov, which meant my wife wasn't just involved in Natasha's murder. My wife was Natasha's sister. She'd stolen her own sister's baby and passed him off as mine. The agents moved fast after that. APBs, highway patrol alerts, airport security notifications. They pulled up photos of Irina Volkov from her immigration records, and I stared at the woman I'd thought I knew. She looked different in those old photos. Harder, thinner, her hair darker. But it was definitely her. Definitely the woman I'd married. The woman I'd trusted with my life. The woman who'd been lying to me since the day we met. Agent Delacroix sat across from me, while the others coordinated the manhunt. I need you to understand something, Mr. Brennan. You're not under arrest. Based on what you've told us, you appear to be a victim here. But we need your full cooperation. Anything you remember, no matter how small, could help us find your son before she disappears with him completely. My son? Was he still my son? Biologically, no. I'd just learned he had no genetic connection to me whatsoever. But I'd raised him. I'd been there for every milestone, every fever, every scraped knee. I'd read him bedtime stories and taught him to swim and held him when he had nightmares. Did that count for nothing? Did biology erase 3 years of love? Agent Huang must have seen something in my face because his expression softened marginally. The child is a victim too. He's been living with the woman who murdered his biological mother. Whatever Irina's planning, it won't end well for him. We need to find him. They kept me at the lab for hours, asking questions, recording statements, building a timeline. Irina had entered the country on a work visa, had been employed as a home health aide for elderly patients. She'd met me at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park 5 years ago, a seemingly random encounter that I now understood had been carefully orchestrated. She'd researched me, targeted me specifically. Why? What had made me useful? Agent Kowalski had theories. You're financially stable, no criminal record, respected in your community. You're an architect, which means flexible schedule and the ability to work from home sometimes. You're a good cover for a woman who needed to hide a child. She used you to create a false identity for Ethan, to get him a birth certificate and social security number, to make him legitimate in the system. She needed a normal American family to hide behind. I felt sick. Every moment of our relationship had been a manipulation. The coffee shop meeting, the dates, the romance, the proposal. She'd never loved me. She'd been using me from day one as cover for a stolen child. But why steal her own sister's baby? What kind of person murders their sibling and takes their child? The answer came from FBI databases. Natasha Volkov had been in a relationship with a man named Dmitry Kuznetsov, a Russian national with suspected ties to organized crime. He'd been under FBI surveillance for money laundering and weapons trafficking. When Natasha disappeared, Dmitry had disappeared too, had fled back to Russia before he could be questioned. The FBI had suspected he was involved in her murder, but had never been able to prove it. Agent Delacroix pulled up surveillance photos of Dmitry, and my stomach dropped again. I'd seen him before. 2 years ago, Irina had insisted we take a vacation to Miami Beach, said she needed sun and relaxation. We'd left Ethan with a babysitter, something she rarely agreed to, and spent 4 days at a beachfront hotel. One afternoon, while I was swimming, I'd come back to our hotel room and found Irina on the balcony talking to a man. She'd said he was an old friend from Russia, that they'd bumped into each other by chance. The man had left quickly when I appeared, and I'd thought nothing of it. That man was Dmitry Kuznetsov. Irina had met with her dead sister's boyfriend, the prime suspect in her sister's murder, which meant she knew what had happened to Natasha, which meant she was either complicit in the murder or had killed Natasha herself. Agent Kowalski leaned forward when I told him about the Miami meeting. Did you hear any of their conversation? Any indication what they discussed? I'd heard fragments through the sliding glass door. They'd been speaking Russian, which Irina had told me she'd forgotten after years in America. Another lie. I'd heard her say Ethan's name several times. I'd heard Dmitry's voice getting louder, angry. I'd heard Irina say something that sounded like money in English. Then I'd slid the door open, and the conversation had ended. Agent Huang made a phone call, spoke in rapid technical jargon I didn't understand, then turned back to us. We've tracked Melissa's phone. It's pinging off a tower near the Indiana border, heading east. She's on I-80, probably aiming for Pennsylvania or New York. We've got state police moving to intercept. I stood up, my legs shaky. I need to be there when you find him. I need to see Ethan. Agent Delacroix shook her head. That's not possible. This is an active federal investigation and a potential hostage situation. We can't have civilians present. He knows me, I insisted. If you corner her, if this turns into a standoff, Ethan's going to be terrified. He needs to see a familiar face. Let me help. They consulted quietly among themselves. Then Agent Kowalski nodded reluctantly. You can ride with us, but you stay in the vehicle until we secure the scene. No heroics, no interference. If you compromise this operation, I'll have you arrested for obstruction. Understood? I understood. We piled into one of the black SUVs, and Agent Delacroix drove while Kowalski coordinated with state police on his phone. I sat in the back next to Agent Huang, watching the suburbs give way to industrial areas, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Somewhere ahead of us, Irina was driving with Ethan, running from the life she'd built and the lies she'd told. What was she thinking right now? What was her endgame? You don't murder someone, steal their child, and maintain an elaborate deception for 3 years without having a plan. The call came through 40 minutes later. Indiana State Police had eyes on the vehicle, a silver Subaru Outback matching the description. They were holding back, maintaining distance, waiting for FBI to coordinate the stop. We were 20 miles behind them, pushing 90 miles per hour on the interstate. Agent Kowalski briefed the team on the ground. Suspect is considered armed and dangerous. Child is in the vehicle, age 3. Do not engage in any way that might endanger the child. We need her stopped, but we need the kid safe. Armed and dangerous. Did Irina have a gun? Had she been armed this whole time while living in our house, while sleeping beside me, while playing with Ethan in our backyard? How much of the woman I'd known was real and how much was tactical calculation? We caught up to the surveillance team just as the sun set completely. Through the front windshield, I could see Irina's Subaru 3 cars ahead, could see the distinctive car seat in the back window where Ethan would be strapped in, probably confused about why Mommy had picked him up early and packed suitcases and was driving somewhere without Daddy. State Police had set up a roadblock 5 miles ahead. The plan was to funnel traffic to a single lane, slow everyone down, then block the road completely and box her in. Standard procedure. Clean, controlled, minimal risk to civilians. It didn't go according to plan. Somehow Irina spotted the roadblock before we got there. Maybe she saw the flashing lights in the distance, or maybe she'd been listening to police scanners, expecting this. She swerved suddenly, crossing 3 lanes of traffic and taking an exit at the last second. Cars honked and braked, our SUV followed, and suddenly we were in a high-speed pursuit through rural Indiana backroads. Agent Delacroix was on the radio. Suspect has left the interstate. We're on County Road 400. Request aerial support. A helicopter would take time to scramble. We didn't have time. Irina was driving like someone with nothing to lose, taking curves too fast, blowing through stop signs. I braced myself against the door, terrified we'd crash, more terrified that she'd crash with Ethan in the car. How could she do this? How could she endanger him like this? Unless she'd never really loved him. Unless he'd always been just a means to an end. But what end? What was worth murdering your own sister? We followed her for 15 minutes through increasingly rural roads, farmland and forest on both sides. Then her brake lights flashed, and she turned sharply onto a dirt road that led into dense woods. Our SUV followed, bouncing over ruts and potholes. Where was she going? This was the middle of nowhere. There was nothing out here, except trees and darkness. The dirt road ended at a clearing with a small cabin, the kind of hunting lodge that wealthy people use once or twice a year. Irina's car skidded to a stop, and she was out immediately, opening the back door and pulling Ethan from his car seat. Our SUV stopped 50 yards back, and all 3 agents drew their weapons. Irina Volkov, FBI, put the child down and put your hands in the air. She didn't put him down. She held Ethan against her chest like a shield and backed toward the cabin. Ethan was crying, his little face pressed against her shoulder, his arms wrapped around her neck. He was wearing his favorite blue shirt with dinosaurs on it, the one he'd insisted on wearing every day this week. He looked so small, so vulnerable. I started to open the car door, and Agent Huang grabbed my arm. Stay here. She's unstable. She could have a weapon. Irina reached the cabin's porch and turned to face us. In the headlights from both vehicles, I could see her face clearly. She looked wild, desperate, nothing like the composed woman I'd lived with. She was shouting something, but I couldn't hear over Ethan's crying. Agent Kowalski used a megaphone. Irina, you're surrounded. There's no way out of this. Put Ethan down and we can talk. Nobody has to get hurt. She disappeared into the cabin with Ethan, slamming the door. Within seconds, the cabin's lights came on. This wasn't random. She'd been here before, had prepared this place as a fallback location. How long had she been planning for this moment? Agent Delacroix was coordinating with the tactical team that was en route. 20 minutes out, maybe less. We had to keep Irina contained, keep her talking, keep Ethan safe until professionals arrived. Agent Kowalski approached the cabin slowly, hands visible, weapon holstered. Irina, I know you can hear me. Let's talk about what you want. Let's figure out how to end this safely. A window broke, glass shattering outward, and Irina's voice came through. You don't understand. None of you understand. He's my nephew, my sister's son. I saved him. Saved him? She'd cut him out of her murdered sister's womb. That wasn't saving, that was desecration. Unless her version of events was different than ours. Unless there was something we didn't know. Agent Kowalski kept his voice calm. Then help us understand. Tell us what happened with Natasha. Tell us how Ethan came to be in your custody. We want to hear your side. There was a long silence. Then Irina's voice again, raw with emotion. Dmitri killed her. My sister was pregnant with his child, and when she tried to leave him, when she said she'd go to the police about his criminal activities, he strangled her. I found her body before anyone else did. She was dead, but the baby was still alive inside her. I could feel him moving. I had worked as a home health aide. I knew basic medical procedures. I had equipment, had supplies. I did the only thing I could do. I saved my nephew from dying with his mother. I kept him alive, And then I found a way to give him a real life, a normal family, a future. I did what I had to do. Agent Huang was recording everything on his phone. This was a confession, whether Irina realized it or not. She'd admitted to performing an unauthorized post-mortem cesarean, to concealing a death, to falsifying documents to create Ethan's fake identity. Even if her story about Dmitry was true, she'd committed multiple felonies. And if she'd been involved in Natasha's murder itself, this was all misdirection. Agent Kowalski tried again. Irina, I believe you wanted to save the baby, but you need to let him go now. He needs medical attention, needs to be evaluated, and you need to come out and tell us everything you know about Dmitry Kuznetsov. Help us bring your sister's real killer to justice. Another long silence. I watched the cabin's windows, looking for any sign of Ethan, any indication he was okay. Then I saw movement in one of the windows. A small face, dark curly hair pressed against the glass. Ethan. He was looking out at the vehicles, at the lights, probably confused and scared. He saw me. Even at this distance, I knew the moment he recognized me. His mouth opened, probably calling Daddy, though I couldn't hear him. Irina appeared behind him, pulling him away from the window. The next voice that came from the cabin wasn't Irina's. It was a man's, heavily accented, speaking English. FBI, you will back away from this cabin. You will provide vehicle with full fuel tank. You will guarantee safe passage to O'Hare Airport, or I will kill woman and child both. Dmitry Kuznetsov was inside. He'd been here the whole time, waiting. This had been his plan, not Irina's. She'd led us here deliberately. Agent Kowalski swore under his breath. This just became a hostage situation with an international fugitive. Protocol had to change. Negotiation had to shift. Everything just got infinitely more complicated. Agent Delacroix was on her phone, escalating to her superiors, requesting the full tactical team immediately. Agent Huang moved to the back of the SUV, started pulling out heavier equipment, body armor, rifles, night vision. This wasn't going to end peacefully. I couldn't sit in the car anymore. I opened the door and got out before Agent Huang could stop me. I walked toward the cabin, hands raised, voice loud enough to carry. Dmitry, my name is David Brennan. I'm Ethan's father. Let me talk to him. Let me make sure he's okay. Agent Kowalski hissed at me to get back, but I ignored him. The cabin door opened slightly, and Dmitry's face appeared in the gap. He was in his 40s, thick, dark hair, cold eyes that assessed me like a predator evaluating prey. You are not father. You are nothing. You are man she used for papers, for legitimacy. Boy is Natasha's son, my son. He belongs to Russia, to his blood. He belongs to himself, I said, taking another step forward. He's 3 years old. He doesn't understand any of this. Whatever issues you have with the FBI, whatever you're running from, he doesn't deserve to be in the middle of it. Let him go. Keep Irina as leverage if you need a hostage, but let Ethan go. Dmitry laughed, harsh and bitter. You think I trust FBI? You think they let me walk away if I release Boy? No. Boy is my guarantee. My blood. He comes with me or he dies with me. Those are only options. Behind him, I heard Ethan crying, calling for me. Daddy, I want Daddy. The sound tore something inside my chest. Agent Kowalski was beside me now, trying to pull me back. Mr. Brennan, you need to stand down. You're making this worse. But Dmitry was looking at me with something like curiosity. You love him, the boy who is not yours. You would die for him, yes? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Then prove it. Come inside. Substitute yourself for Boy. You stay as hostage, he goes free. This is trade I offer. Agent Kowalski grabbed my arm hard. Absolutely not. We don't negotiate with hostage takers. We don't trade civilians. But I was already moving forward. The tactical team was 20 minutes out. In 20 minutes, Dmitry might panic, might hurt Ethan, might turn this into a bloodbath. If I could get Ethan out now, safely, nothing else mattered. Not my safety, not my life. He was my son in every way that counted. Biology was irrelevant. I'm coming in, I called to Dmitry. Let Ethan come out first, then I'll enter. You'll have your hostage. Dmitry considered, then nodded. The cabin door opened wider, and Irina appeared, holding Ethan. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Regret? Gratitude? Fear? She walked Ethan across the clearing and stopped 10 feet from the vehicles. Ethan was reaching for me, crying, saying my name over and over. Irina set him down and he ran to me. I dropped to my knees and caught him, holding him so tight he squeaked. He was warm and solid and alive, his little heart racing against my chest. Daddy, I was scared. Why did Mommy take me away? Why are there police cars? I want to go home. I looked at Agent Delacroix, who'd moved forward quickly. Take him, I said, passing Ethan to her. He clung to me, not wanting to let go, but I peeled his arms away gently. You're going to go with this nice lady. She's going to take you somewhere safe. I'll see you soon, buddy. I promise. It was a lie. I had no idea if I'd see him again, but I needed him to feel safe, to not be more traumatized than he already was. Agent Delacroix carried Ethan back to the SUV and he screamed for me the whole way. The sound would haunt me forever, but he was safe. That was all that mattered. I turned back to the cabin, and Dmitry gestured with a gun I hadn't seen before. Now you come in. Slow. Hands where I see them. I walked forward, each step feeling surreal. Behind me, I heard Agent Kowalski on the radio, explaining what was happening, probably getting screamed at by his superiors. The FBI didn't like civilians making executive decisions, but I'd gotten Ethan out. Whatever happened now, he was safe. I stepped into the cabin, and Dmitri closed the door behind me. Inside was a single room, sparsely furnished. Hunting gear, a table, some chairs. Irina sat in one corner, her face in her hands, sobbing. She'd been crying the entire time. Dmitri pushed me toward a chair and zip-tied my hands behind my back. Then he pressed the gun against the back of my head. Now we wait. We waited for 3 hours. The tactical team arrived, set up perimeter, assessed the situation. A negotiator tried to establish communication, a woman with a calm voice speaking through a megaphone, asking Dmitri what he wanted, what it would take to end this peacefully. Dmitri's demands were impossible. Safe passage out of the country, immunity from prosecution, access to bank accounts that had been frozen by federal authorities, things the FBI would never agree to. As the night wore on, Dmitri got more agitated. He paced, waved the gun around, shouted in Russian at Irina, who'd stopped crying and now sat silent and empty-looking. I tried to stay calm, to not provoke him, tried to think about Ethan safely away from here, tried to imagine him being placed with social services, evaluated by doctors, eventually maybe returned to me, if I survived this, if I was deemed a fit parent, despite not being biologically related, if the system decided love mattered more than DNA. Around midnight, Irina finally spoke. Dmitri, this is over. They will not let you leave. They will wait you out. And when you become desperate, you will kill us both, and then yourself. That is how this ends. Let him go. Let David go. He is innocent in this. Keep only me. I am the one who wronged you. Dmitri turned on her, his face twisted with rage. You wronged me? You saved my son. You took him after you killed Natasha and you gave him a life. You think I don't know? You think I am stupid? My breath stopped. Killed Natasha. Irina had killed her own sister. Not Dmitri. Irina. She stood up slowly, her voice hollow. She was going to take him from you. She was going to disappear with your child, and you would never find them. She was going to destroy everything you built. I did what you wanted but didn't have courage to do yourself. I saved you, and then I saved your son. Dmitri's gun swung between us, his hand shaking. I did not ask you to kill her. I loved her. She was mother of my child. You loved your criminal empire more, Irina spat. You loved your money, your power, your reputation. You would have chosen all of that over her. So I chose for you. And I protected your son because Natasha was my sister and I owed her that much. The gun was against her forehead now. Dmitri's finger on the trigger, his face contorted with grief and rage and something that might have been guilt. You destroyed everything. Yes, Irina said quietly. I did, and I would do it again to protect him. That boy is all that remains of Natasha. He is all that matters. The window exploded inward. Tactical team, flashbangs, smoke, chaos. I threw myself sideways off the chair, hitting the floor hard, my hands still zip-tied behind me. Gunfire, close and deafening. Shouting, boots on wood. Someone grabbed me, dragged me toward the door. I couldn't see anything through the smoke, couldn't hear anything but ringing. Outside, they cut the zip ties and pulled me away from the cabin. Paramedics appeared, checking me over, asking questions I couldn't process. Behind me, agents were bringing out bodies. Dmitri first, a sheet over his face, dead. Then Irina, also covered, also dead. The tactical team had taken both of them out in the initial breach. Clean shots, no hesitation. Agent Kowalski found me sitting on the bumper of an ambulance, wrapped in a shock blanket despite not being cold. Mr. Brennan, are you injured? I shook my head. I wasn't injured. I was destroyed, but not injured. Ethan, where is he? Safe. He's at a children's hospital in Indianapolis being evaluated. He's physically fine, no injuries. Psychologically, he'll need time, but he's asking for you. Agent Huang approached, his expression somber. We recovered Dmitri's phone. He's been in contact with associates in Russia who were planning to help him flee the country with Ethan. There was money involved, a lot of money. Irina had been stealing from Dmitri for years, siphoning funds from his accounts, using Ethan as leverage. That's why she met with Dmitri in Miami. She was blackmailing him. Pay her or she'd turn him in. But eventually, he'd had enough and came for his son. Agent Delacroix handed me her phone, showing photos they'd found in the cabin. Pictures of Natasha, pregnant and smiling, unaware her sister was planning to murder her. Pictures of Irina performing the cesarean in what looked like a garage or warehouse, her hands bloody, a tiny premature infant in her arms. Pictures of Ethan as a newborn, hooked to medical equipment that Irina must have stolen from hospitals. She'd kept him alive for 3 months before approaching me, before starting her elaborate seduction, before building the lie that would become our life. Will I be able to see him? I asked. Will they let me be part of his life? Agent Kowalski sat beside me. That's complicated. Legally, you have no parental rights. Ethan's biological mother is dead, his biological father is dead, and the woman who raised him for 3 years was his aunt who murdered his mother. There's no precedent for this. Child Services will have to determine what's in his best interest. You'll need a lawyer. You'll need to fight for custody. But you saved his life tonight. That counts for something. It had to count for everything. Because I'd already lost Melissa, lost my marriage, lost my identity as Ethan's biological father. I couldn't lose Ethan himself. He was the only real thing left. 6 months later, after lawyers and social workers and psychological evaluations and court hearings that felt endless, I was granted full custody of Ethan. The judge ruled that biological connection was less important than the bond we'd formed, that removing him from the only father he'd ever known would cause more harm than good. Ethan calls me Daddy. He doesn't understand the complicated truth of his origin, and maybe he never will. We live in a new house now, somewhere the memories can't reach us. And every night when I tuck him into his bed and he says, "I love you, Daddy," I know that DNA doesn't make a family. Love does. That's the only truth that matters. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.